The following was recorded during the COVID-19 pandemic through Zoom meetings in accordance with local health guidelines. Hi, and welcome to another CSRM podcast. I'm Mike Maloney, and today's episode is hosted by Dr. Greg Linville.
Hi, welcome back to another CSRM podcast. Greg Linville here with you today, but I have two very, very special guests with me. And these are partners in the ministry that we have experienced now for probably more decades than we care to mention. But it's been very, very special time. And what we've affectionately called the North Atlantic Corridor, that we feel like we're kind of living the modern day aspect of this that started hundreds of years ago when people that were integrating faith and sport and using sport as a way to reach people for Jesus, they connected from America to England and Scotland and all those other places in the UK. And so today I have both Bryan Mason with us. Welcome, Bryan.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, Bryan is currently living in Worcester, and that is not in Massachusetts or Ohio, but in the UK. And then Steve Connor, who spent a good deal of time in Scotland and the UK, and has been back now in another foreign country we call Indiana. Oh, sorry, Steve. Steve Connor, welcome to the podcast.
Greg, it's great. They just wired for electricity, so now I got a computer. It's really good.
There you have it. Well, and the reason that we're here today is to talk about some new developments within literature, within the sports ministry world. And both of the folks on this podcast with us have written new books. Now, they've written other books, but these are like brand spanking new, just coming out this year within the last 60 days. And so I'm going to start, Bryan, with you. The title of your book is Maintaining Pace. And just give us a little background of the title and the purpose. What are you trying to get through in this book?
Well, I think the light might have first dawned in the last century when I was coming close up on 50. And I think sometimes when you get to a significant staging post in life, you wonder whether God might have a fresh plan, whether there might be a new breeze of the Holy Spirit coming. And I thought probably I'd been teaching 30 years. Oh, that's
here we are. We this is live. This is not in the can live.
Oh, goodness me. Well, yeah, I'm just trying to see if I can. Paul, I'm just on the line. Can I come back to you? Sorry, guys. I should.
You never know when your agent's.
Oh, listen. So when I was coming up to 50, I didn't have a mobile phone, which was thankful. But anyway, I was just wondering about this new stage. And I don't know whether our listeners know a great deal about cricket, but I know you two guys know enough because of your time on the right side of the pond.
This is the sport, not the bug.
Yes, you got it. The sport, not the bug. And there happened to be a well-known cricketer, as I say, in England. He's now a knight of the realm, Sir Geoffrey Boycott. And I just happened to hear him on one occasion talking about when he'd scored 50 runs. And someone said to him, "Why is it, Geoffrey, that you managed to get from 50 to 100, score a century, and do that fairly regularly? Whereas a lot of people, they score 50 and then they just swing the bat a bit recklessly and they're out for 60 or 70. they never make it all the way to a century. And Jeffrey said these profound words, and he didn't often come out with much profundity, but on this occasion, he was spot on. He said, well, I say to the umpire, the referee, if you will you give me a fresh guard? And what he meant was he just wanted his bat put in a position as if he was starting again. He got 50 runs in the bank. He wasn't relying on those. He wanted to make a new start, a fresh start. And that just got me thinking. And so that really, I think, probably was the seed of me thinking of those different stages of life. First half, half time, second half, and in my case now, extra time, as what God wants to do with us, something special. Judith and I are both in our fourth quarter now. I just started it, and we think it's probably the most exciting time of our lives.
Excellent. And Steve, rugged discipleship. What was the background of that? What was the motivation and inspiration for that for you?
Greg, I've always been blessed to have disciples in my life that have discipled me. And I have discipled many, many people. One of my guys was he was Nigerian, but he was an American. And he came and stayed with us. And I remember he said to us, we are not prepared for all the things that are happening in the new secularized Western world. And I said, what do we need to help us? And he said, well, we need Christians to be tougher. We need them to be rugged. And so I just asked him, I said, how do you make rugged Christians? And he said, rugged discipleship. And that name stuck with me for the last 10 years. I thought that would be a great title for a book.
And if you're just joining in, we are recording during the pandemic of 2020. And we are obviously not in our normal studio. And so we apologize if we don't have quite the quality, because we are doing this as the rest of the world is right now through a Zoom kind of communication. So please bear with us on that. But we're just glad that you're with us, and we're glad that these two men have joined us. Now, Steve, you have had experience with sports ministry on both sides of the pond, as we say. The right side, as Bryan says, and the left side, where we're at it in America. And you tell us a little bit about your time in the UK. What did you do there?
I have a sports background, and I've played at every level in American football. I've coached at almost every level, and I've been a chaplain at every level and on several continents. And my friend, our mutual friend, Dr. Jerry Root, a big C.S. Lewis scholar, was studying in Oxford. And while he was in Oxford, he met this one guy doing sports ministry, pioneering it in all of Europe. And his name was Andrew Wingfield Digby. And while he was there, they said, well, we probably need one of those damn Yanks, because they were great recruiting tool. He said, because of all these silly sports that are coming over, like American football. And so when he went home, I'd just left coaching, and I was working for Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And he said, Steve, I would really like you to possibly look at the possibility of going over to the United Kingdom and helping pioneer sports ministry. By the way, there's an American football team and they need a head coach. You might be a good fit. So that's how I got over there. That was in 1990, and we were in the UK for 15 years, 9 years working at Oxford and the university there, and 6 years up in Scotland developing the sports ministry there.
And you worked with Christians in sport while you were there. And is that where you met Bryan?
Indeed. I was, after about 3 years, we decided to break sports ministry into 5 areas. We broke it into high-profile athletes, and a few of us worked with them in encouraging professional sports people. We worked with the local amateur athletes, the ones that they're not famous, but their lives are continually, when they wake up in the morning, all they think about is sport. That's going to be the high amateurs. The third one's going to be university. The fourth one, which Bryan spearheaded and has just been one of the global experts, which, Greg, you've been a huge influence, is church sports. And then the fifth one is youth sports ministry. And I thought the best way to do youth sports ministry, which would be a camp, and start developing the camp ministry. There was no sports ministry camps that we could identify in Europe at the time, Christian camps. And I knew that I needed help. I was young, didn't have any children then. I was going to be running this camp, and I knew I needed somebody that understood discipline, school systems, leadership. And someone said, go to Leeds. There's a guy that's a deputy head. He's the vice principal of a school. I went up to that school, and I'd been in schools all over the UK speaking at a number of events. And it was the best school I ever saw, the most disciplined, the happiest, most cheerful, cleanest. It was a remarkable state school. And Bryan Mason was the deputy head. And I remember being nervous trying to pitch this whole sports ministry thing. And I got in his car, and he had these Bible verses from Navigators. And here he was still, even though he'd been a Christian long in the tooth, he's still trying to memorize verses. I said, oh, I love this guy. I hope he would come and help our sports camps. And he was remarkable, created it, and really, really put the fingerprint on it, the gold standard, that this is a good thing to do in the United Kingdom. And so that's how we got started.
A forerunner of a rugged disciple.
Yeah. And now there's camps in Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England, and spreading out throughout Europe and throughout Australia and other places. Now when I go to those camps, I learn from them.
That's right. So Bryan, you also have a sporting background, and in America, I think, if I've got it right, you would be called a physical education teacher, as well as your administrative duties at the school there. And out of that, then, we call you the most retiring person we've ever met, because you retired from that, you retired from Christians in Sport, and now you're retired from CSRM. You were our European director for a number of years.
I've been to 3 of his retirement parties.
As long as you don't retire from that wonderful wife of yours, we'll stay in touch with you here. But a little bit of reflections about when Mr. Connors came across and how you met.
Well, I want to remember Judith and I think, probably attending some seminars at a Christian festival called Spring Harvest. And the title of the seminar was Don't Retire, Get Retreaded. And so I think that's something we've probably been seeking to do, as these different chapters in our lives have started to unfold. But going back to Steve, then just coming across him was great, and I was thinking there must be ways in which we can develop this partnership a little more. And so what Steve has said about him coming up to our school, and we did a 3-day mission, and we got youngsters from all over the place coming along, and did a night of champions, which was something that again Steve has set in motion, and so that was a real blessing. The only downside for me was when he introduced me to the first camp that we ran together as the mean dean. Here's me thinking I could come with something of a reputation and establish a friendly atmosphere with these young people, and I was marched in as the mean dean. But nevertheless, they were great times. But the very first camp that we had, and I'm pretty certain that was in 1994, then we just had 30 young people. And I remember looking after the rugby side of the mornings coaching, when people chose what they thought was their main sport. And there was my good self and I think five youngsters. So we had a little bit of difficulty when it came to scrum downs, but nevertheless, they were exciting times. And it was just great to be there right at the beginning. And at the end of that week, Steve and I sat together and we did a bit of debriefing. If I remember rightly, I think said, wouldn't it be wonderful if God could just take this camp and just all that's set up and everything in place and take it to the 4 home counties, to England, Scotland, Ireland and Wales. So that was a very optimistic prayer at that stage, with 30 young people just about to go home after what looked as if it had been an exciting week for them. And so here we are, a quarter of a century later, and not only are there Sports Plus camps, which is the name that Steve gave to these camps, in England, Scotland, Ireland and Wales, but in many cases there are back-to-back. So you'll find that there'll be 2 following each other at Repton School. There may be 2 following each other at Christ College Brecon. I know that's happened, I think, in Northern Ireland. I was privileged to be the dean on a couple of Scottish camps that once Steve had gone to Scotland, they started ravaging the north with Sports Plus. So for me, it's just been a friendship and a partnership from heaven with Steve. But now I think Christians in Sport would see their youth work as being really the mainspring of their ministry. Young men and women, teenagers from the age of 12 up to 19. Some of them would start at 12 and they wouldn't miss a year, and then they would become junior leaders in their 6th form. They would then become leaders as they went to university. They would join a Christians in Sport group. Somewhere along the line in those 6 or 7 years, they'd have found a husband or a wife. And the church they went to, they'd be doing sports ministry. So it's just birthed a whole load of kaleidoscopic ministry in sport. And I'm sure Christians in Sport are, and as I know they are, indebted to Steve's inspiring leadership.
Well, it certainly is a legacy. It certainly is something that has made a difference in so many lives. And I'm not sure, Steve, if it was the first time that you and I met, but we did meet at the Sports Plus camp there at Repton. I was privileged enough that Bryan had invited me, and you guys will, I think, appreciate this, that my son came along with me.
Yeah.
As I believe he was 9 the first time, and went, and 11 the second time. And he took those took part of the cricket part of the Sports Plus camps. And he came back. He was one of the top 100 cricketers in America. There's 105 of them, but he was in the top 100 after those experiences. But so foundational in what you guys have been able to pioneer there. It's just amazing what's going on. The reason that we spend some time right now, that I wanted to spend some time talking about your athletic background, your sporting background, and some of the ministry background, is that the books that you have just both authored and we've published have been published by Overwhelming Victory Press, which is the publishing arm of CSRM. And our niche in the publications market is for sports ministry, and even maybe a little narrower than that on the local church part of that sports ministry world and community. And we typically are printing books that are how to or why to do sports ministry. And your books are not necessarily going to help a sports minister in their church or an FCA director or somebody like that. They're not necessarily going to help them know how to run their league or their camp or their outreach. But we feel very strongly about your 2 books, and the reason that we wanted to publish them was because what you have provided is the blueprint and the foundation for which those people who are doing those camps and doing those outreaches, doing the ministry, it's the foundation of which their own personal lives need to be built. If they are not rugged disciples, they have no business being in the ministry. If they're not maintaining pace in their relationship with Jesus, Steve, great, the little memory verses right in the car. You know, that is a perfect example of what we know about Bryan. Always maintaining pace. If these folks that are doing sports ministry aren't pouring into themselves and going deeper with Jesus, eventually their ministry is not going to be valid at all. It's going to be shipwrecked. And so this is part of the reason why we feel it's so important to have these two books. And so even though it may not be right dead eye on the sports ministry, it is on the sports ministry. And it's the people even that they're influencing, that they can recommend the books to keep them going on that. So, Bryan, speak to that issue a little bit. Maintaining pace for that sports minister, why would it be great for that sports minister to pick up that copy? What did you have in mind for them?
Well, I think whatever stage of life we're at, there may well come a time where the question, where am I at the moment? Where do I want to get to? What route am I likely to take? And how do I get there? And I think whether you're in the first half of your life, and there's a sense in which maintaining pace is really aimed at folks who might be in their mid-30s and their post-70s. So it covers a fairly wide spread. And I think if we're wanting to go at God's pace, I've likened it in one of the chapters to a 4 by 100 meters race. And one of the things when I used to coach relay racing was to insist that the four runners kept the baton, or I think I'm probably speaking to the majority of maybe an American audience here, the baton. I know that usually causes a few grins, but for the baton to maintain the same pace. Whereas what happens sometimes is that the incoming runner staggers into the changeover box and almost collapses as he hands over the baton to the outgoing runner. And I just think it's essential as we come to various stages in our lives that we can keep going at the pace that God wants us to go at. And so as you come to the end of the first half of life, which has usually been very hectic, just because of family commitments, of occupational responsibilities. Sometimes it might be a mortgage. It might be everything else that's flying around at the time. And there comes a time where either you can have a midlife crisis, or you can go into the changing room, into the locker room with Jesus and just sit down and just listen to what he's got to say about how you're going to come out of that locker room into the second half of life. Because the first half may have been very successful. You may have achieved a lot of the targets that you were aiming for. You've got to be careful that status doesn't take over and all you're worried about is your name on the door. But then as you emerge into the second half, then that comes a time when you ask not so much about success, but more about significance and probably what am I going to leave behind? And
say that again. It's not about success. Wanted to make sure people could grab that. It's not about success. It's what?
It's significance. Yeah. So it's moving into that position where you feel, because of the number of years you've been on the road with Jesus, there will be one or two things that he's taught you, and when you've listened, that you can pass on to someone else. So you might be at a spiritual direction stage, you might be at a mentoring stage, simply because of all that you've learned in the first half, sitting down at half time, and then ready for that second half, and that can be a great time. And I think a lot of churches and probably a lot of sports ministries, they don't recognise that maturity of people in that age group who've got so much to give, so much to pass on. And if the church is not careful, they just become what you might call pew sediment. They're just sitting there. People think they're over the hill. Over the hill? I mean, Caleb, who at 85 said, show me where the next hill is. And so there are so many things unfolding. So I think those are the areas that I feel passionate about, and I wanted to spread abroad a little.
Excellent. And Steve, same question. Speak to that sports minister out there, and what is rugged discipleship going to do for them in their lives and their ministry, and enhancing and expanding that?
It's aspirational. I think that it's a book that's not only going to tell you, how to do. It's going to give you some good tips on how to do sports ministry, but it's going to encourage you as well. It's very descriptive besides being prescriptive, and it's got a lot of exciting stories, a lot of details about my past, but also some of the most incredible disciple makers that I've ever met or studied about as well. And what are some of the principles? And obviously a principle is going to be timeless and universal. And so how do we take those principles and do it with our people in 21st century? Obviously one of the biggest things, this is where sports is fantastic, is that you need time and relationship. It's about relationship. Zoom's okay, this is good, but boy, we'd have a lot more fun if we were all in the same room. Right? And sport is this incredible factory of relationship building, but then do we use the power of that relationship intentionally for growing Christians? And obviously Jesus used the parable of the sowers, and we've just seen so many weak Christians out there that have been burned out or been snapped up, and we want them into the good soil, and that's finding these potential leaders and helping them to become disciple makers, as CSRM loves to say, to reproduce reproducers. And so that's what we're trying to do, using models like both of you guys, and seeing what you've done and how exciting it is. And so we're using those models. And I've got a few stories, from skydiving to Chicago Bears to jumping a train into Canada. So we've got a few stories out there that are kind of fun too.
Well, that's one of the things that makes both of your books really, really significant, and that is that you're both great storytellers. And it's not that you're fabricating stories, not those kind of things, but you're relating real life experiences that you both have. In fact, I find that both of the books, there's a bit of vulnerability in both of those books about your own lives and your own even foibles, and what you've learned. And so it's not only are you recommending what you've done well, but also maybe some times when you haven't done so well. And
like, if I could say that, I think transparency is so important. And so I understand why pastors are not going to be as transparent. Maybe they're going to get in trouble for that. But I've found that I relate better to an imperfect person. And so in the book, when I said, I'll tell a young man, yeah, I struggle with pornography just like everybody else. They go, you're a pastor. You've got your doctorate. How could you? Oh, no. Are you kidding me? Any male I don't know that doesn't struggle with it is evident,
Yeah.
So the transparency thing, I think, is really important. And I love Bryan's book. And just surprised, he's very, very open. I think maintaining pace is a good deal here. I've seen a couple stories that I hadn't heard, Bryan, before. But
only two.
But most of them, I think, I've preached before and used your stories.
Well, hopefully your wives weren't surprised when they read the book about the stories. But
they always prep the books. They get them before you do.
Judith's often said that if I fell over in the pulpit at any stage, she could just finish the sentence.
Yeah. There you go. Well, we've come to the end of this one, but we're going to continue on. For those of you that are listening or watching this, we're going to have another segment with them that'll come out next week, whenever you've heard this one, or if you're in an archived setting where you're listening, watching it because of archived in the future, get the next one as well. You're going to hear more about these books and also about some other books that they've written and some of the things that they've done in their lives. And if you are listening, go to the CSRM website, and it'll have all the information there. The stuff is coming up on your screen now. If you're interested in ordering these books or any of the Overwhelming Victory books, and how to get in touch with us at CSRM, but also to get in touch with both of these men, who I know would respond in any kind of way that you could get in touch with them. So thanks for joining us, men, and we'll look forward to talking on our next podcast.
CSRM's podcasts are a resource provided by the Association of Church, Sports, and Recreation Ministries and its production house, Overwhelming Victory Flicks. This episode was produced by Dr. Greg Linville and edited by Andrew Fouts. For more information about CSRM, visit csrm.org. For more information about our publishing and production houses, visit csrm.org and click on the Resource tab. For CSRM Podcasts, I'm Mike Maloney. Have a blessed day.